Okay, let's talk about specific issues in real estate contracts. Building up to the real estate contract that you're actually going to be creating this week as part of your assignment. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is a listing agreement. A listing agreement, let me close this chat box, is the agreement between the seller fingers in the wrong places, seller and real estate broker. And in this situation, we have a seller who contacts a real estate broker and says, I would like to sell my house. Now, in that situation, you contact the real estate broker, you go through a whole bunch of paperwork, which I'm in place right now, and they ask you all of these questions so that they will know the correct answer. Has the place ever caught on fire? Has it ever had termite infection? Has the roof ever had a leak? Have you ever had flooding issues? And then they go through a bunch of other stuff. Now, the deal that you work out with the real estate broker is you list the house for 6 months. So it usually lasts for 6 months, most common. And the real estate broker says, I will get a 6% commission from the sale. And in exchange for that 6% commission, advertise the place for sale, put it on the web, and put it in the multiple listing service, which we'll be talking about in much greater detail later on. Now, that means they may put it in those little booklets that they put out everywhere. They're probably going to put it on the web. These days, they're going to put it on Trulia and Zillow. They're going to put it in the multiple listing service. They're going to put a sign in your yard. And they may schedule an open house. They're going to do lots of things. Now, in exchange for that, of course, they also say, well, you know, you got to help us out. If you're living in the house, you got to make it available so we can show it. So that's one of the other conditions that goes into the listing agreement contract. And if the house is empty, they'll say, well, we need to put a lockbox on it with a key in it so we can get access to it, so we can show the place. And you get a lot of that. The other thing, of course, is that you don't do anything to try to defraud the broker. Now, one of the things that might happen is, let's suppose it's 5 months and 2 weeks into the listing agreement, and you know in 2 weeks that listing agreement is going to expire, and some guy approaches you and says, you know what? If we wait just 2 weeks, I'll buy your place, and you won't have to pay the 6% commission. And how about we come off the price a little bit? I'll save some money, you save some money, good for me, good for you, we'll be fine. Well, if the real estate broker can prove that that person showed up during the course of the listing agreement, and you subsequently sell to them, the real estate broker still gets the commission, if they can prove that the person showed up while the agreement was pending. And believe it or not, you might think, well, that's kind of hard to prove. It usually isn't. Usually, the two people involved in this have to create something in writing. They have something that occurred, and more often than not, the listing agent, the real estate broker, produces a phone log that says, I spoke to Mr. Smith 2 weeks before the agreement was posted, showed him the house, and then subsequently sold it after the agreement expired. So my advice on that is, you get a good deal from a broker. Nobody ever wants to spend money. Nobody ever wants to spend the 6%. They're worth it, though. I mean, I'd like to save the 6% too, but you get a lot of you get a professional working with you. It's worth the money. And usually, when you try to stick it to somebody, it almost always blows up in the face. So I would suggest not doing that. But that's between you and your conscience. Now, there are different types of listing agreements. The first two, open listing and exclusive listing, you just don't get these very often. I'm just going to mention what they are so you know what they are. In an open listing, means that anybody can sell this house. Any broker, and as well the seller. Now, if the seller sells, they get to keep their own commission. Well, you don't have to be a genius in mathematics to realize that if you're a real estate broker, that's not going to work for you. You don't want an open listing so that if the seller sells the house, they get to keep the commission. That doesn't make any sense. You put all this work, time, and effort in. So we don't generally get a lot of open listings, at least with residential property. Now, the reason I mention it is because sometimes you do have these in commercial property. Now, if you're the buyer, you don't want an exclusive listing because that means only the real estate agent that you listed it with can sell it. So anybody else, they don't get the commission. The seller obviously doesn't get the commission. Any other real estate agent shows up with a buyer, they don't get the commission either. And so the first one is detrimental to the real estate agent. The second one is detrimental to the seller, which is why most of the time we don't see them. The one you see the most, though, the big kahuna, 99.9% of the time, the multiple listing. Now, the multiple listing service, MLS, multiple listing service, oh, I love this one. Now, in the olden times, I only want to mention because some of you weren't born yet, but anyway, let's say 1985, I was 4. When I first got involved in real estate law, multiple listing service actually was a book because we didn't have that thing called the internet. And the book came out once a month, and the hot sheets came out on Fridays. And when I was working for a real estate firm, what we did instead is we waited for the hot sheets to come out, and the reason we called them the hot sheets wasn't just because they listed the most recent properties for sale and that made them hot, but it was also because they were on red paper. Well, that sounds hot. Some people also used to call them pink sheets. And the pink sheets would come out and they'd be distributed to all the local real estate agents. And the multiple listing service did then exactly the same thing that it does now. Very simple. In fact, it's so simple, it's brilliant. I don't know who came up with it, but it's a brilliant idea. And what a multiple listing does is it offers the house for sale, and it says to any real estate broker in the area, anybody, if you can find a buyer, we will split the commission. Oops, I better put my glasses back on. I just wrote something weird. So the real genius of the multiple listing service says we will split the commission 50-50. So the listing agent, the person that the seller met with to list the house for sale in the listing agreement, they said, well, if I sell the house, I get a 6% commission. But then what they do is they put the property in the MLS, the multiple listing service, and that advertises the property to every real estate agent in the community. And it has with it this little offer that says, if you find a buyer, you and I will split the commission. So the house sells for $100,000. You know, I like to keep the math nice and simple. That's $6,000. That means that the person who found the buyer, who wasn't the listing agent, gets 50% or $3,000, and the other broker gets $3,000. Great. What's nice about that is, as if you're the seller, you potentially have every real estate broker in the area working for you, because everybody wants to sell your house because you're going to get 50% of the commission. As a result of that, you generally get much better sales from that than you do with just about any other type of listing, certainly more so than open listing. And you get everyone potentially working for you as the seller. Now, the flip side of that coin is because most of the brokers are working for the seller, that means they are not working for the buyer. And that means their ethical and legal obligations are to the seller, whom they may not ever actually even have met. And so we'll talk more about ethical dilemmas later on. Questions so far, especially about multiple listing. We have some more details about that, but haven't stopped for a while, so I want to make sure we're okay. And also because I'm in an empty classroom again, and that always makes me feel a little weird, especially since somebody just opened the door to peek in and they saw me talking to myself and probably think that I'm crazy. So, how are we doing? Questions so far? Kathy, okay. A couple people broke for lunch already, running to the, okay. Good, good. Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for letting me know. Remind me before the end of class. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the multiple listing, and then we're going to get to the real meat and potatoes of this week's assignment, which is the offer to purchase and contract. I love the MLS. As I said, in the old days, it was a book, and they would take pictures, and they would type it all up, and they would tape it onto a page, and then they'd run off with a copy, and then we don't do that anymore. Just put it on the computer now. So the multiple listing service now is this thing that brokers can log on to. They have their own key, they can log in, they can see the most recent listings. And it used to be, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, multiple listing services were treated like gold, like secret information that only the brokers could get. And then somewhere along the line, the whole attitude seems to change. Now you can see the MLS listings everywhere. You can log into local real estate agencies, and if you've got the MLS number, you can put it in, and they'll show you everything you want to know. I don't know when the change happened, but it used to be that you had to go through a broker, and they would only they'd give you a code that's only good for a week, and then you could pull up the MLS, and after that, it expired. And then somebody must have figured out, you know, why are we keeping all this stuff secret? Why don't we just let everybody have access to it? Because maybe somebody will call us up about a property we haven't thought about, and they'll want to buy it. They still got to go through us anyway. And so they started making it available